Welcome back to Brain Chatter, where we listen past the daily noise and explore topics at the intersection of leadership, workplace culture, profit, and sustainability. I am your host, Derek Brown. The topic of this episode is effective workplace feedback. Today's guest is Dr. Ken Chapman, founder of Ken Chapman Associates Incorporated, sponsor of this podcast, and author of the Leaders Code book. Dr. Chapman has been working as an organizational psychologist, consulting on leadership and management issues, and strengthening workplace cultures for over 40 years across 4 continents and within over 500 company locations. Dr. Chapman, thank you for coming back to record your 3rd episode of Brain Chatter.
Thanks, Derek. I appreciate the opportunity. I guess it is number 3, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. First question, why is it that you dislike and recommend against having annual performance reviews?
That's a great question to begin with, because it's the one that usually gets raised eyebrows when I'm talking with an executive or a general manager, because there's this assumption that there must be some accounting, and the best way to have that accounting, so to speak, is to have an annual review. It's not so much that I think that annual reviews are useless. It's that too often they replace something that is more valuable. And that the thing that is more valuable is that people get feedback every day. If someone does something exceptional, they should know that day. If they fail to meet an expectation, they should know that day. When I say that I dislike annual reviews, what I really intend to do is to get people's attention and to make sure they understand that an annual review is relatively worthless if during the year you have not been providing daily, systematic feedback when it was expected or required.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. That makes sense to me. And since I report to you in my own work, I know that you personally encourage feedback. Would you describe the sort of feedback you appreciate when it comes from a direct report, when it comes from a customer, or when it comes from some other source?
Thanks, Derek. That's another great question, because the higher up you are in an organization, the more difficult it is to get good feedback. People are reluctant to tell the boss the truth. They're reluctant to be candid because they suspect that, 1, it may not be appropriate, or 2, that there may be some consequence that's associated with it. So one of the most important things that a leader has to do is create an environment in which people are comfortable providing feedback. That means that you have to do things like listen when people are talking to you. Also, be careful to thank them for the feedback that they provide, and most of all, to be sure that they never face any consequence when they have come to you with candid information which they hope will be helpful to you and or the organization. Feedback is essential, and not too long ago, I asked our team at KCNA to provide me with some feedback, and I suspect that my response and what I discovered is what most people in similar positions discover. You think you have a pretty good idea of what people think and a pretty good idea of where they're coming from in terms of their interaction with you, but there are surprises. For example, the KCNA team shared with me several things, but probably the most noteworthy was that I tend to move through my day thinking that people have telepathic ability, that they can automatically discern what it is that I'm thinking. And when I thought about it, I realized that that probably is true, and I've taken measures to remedy that. Another thing that was mentioned was that I needed to be more direct in what I want or don't want. And I think that goes back to my emphasis inside our firm that we are a team of peers, that we're a team of colleagues, and my assumption, which is not a good assumption, that I don't have to say things directly, that people can decipher them from a conversation. Well, sometimes that's okay. But when something needs to be done and the direction needs to be clear, then I and all other leaders, supervisors, managers, executives need to be direct and candid. Courteous with people, but to certainly be direct and candid.
Can you describe what the most helpful feedback to you includes in terms of specifics, timing, and how goodwill for mutual interest is expressed within that feedback?
And goodwill has to be the foundation of it, Derek. The reality is that you certainly want to choose the right time and place, which is usually going to be in private, one-to-one. And you want to provide the feedback in a timely manner so that people benefit from it as early and as quickly as possible. But it's hard to overstate the importance of the goodwill, and that is to making it clear in the tone and the manner in which you offer the feedback that you intend this as an investment in the person's success and that you want them to benefit, not be harmed by what you're saying. So tone of voice and the choice of words certainly matters. The other thing that I would add about this is that if you're in a leadership role, supervisor, manager, GM, executive, it really is something that goes to your own success to nurture in your direct reports their willingness to give you candid feedback in a timely manner. The way that I phrase it to organizational leaders is this: cultivate the understanding that good news can wait. That's right, cultivate the understanding that good news can wait, but that bad news can't. So it works like this. Good news is always good to hear. It certainly cheers people up, raises morale, certainly strengthens relationships. But it's also true that the sooner you know about something that's problematic, the sooner and easier you're going to be able to repair it. The whole concept of process improvement lends itself here, and that is that when a problem arises, the sooner I know about that problem, the easier, not necessarily easy, but the easier it's going to be resolved. And the longer that problem goes unrecognized, the more difficult it will be to resolve. If I've convinced through my interaction with the people who report to me that it's safe to bring me bad news quickly, then they'll bring me bad news quickly. And that's a much greater investment in my and their success than them bringing me good news and only good news.
Would you contrast the difference between feedback that is constructive versus not constructive or even destructive?
One of the things that you sense right away when someone is offering you constructive feedback is that, as we mentioned earlier, they have goodwill for you. And you have the sense that they want to be helpful. Not only do they want to provide you with information that might prevent you from making a mistake or enable you to grow, but they also go so far as to say, can I help you with this? Is there something I can offer that will make this feedback more useful to you? The person who has destructive feedback, there's always a sense that it has a gotcha quality to it. They may have even been holding on to it for the right moment so they can talk about it in front of others in an important meeting. The greater the time that passes between when you know that I need to make a correction and when you actually talk to me about it, the less it feels businesslike and the more it feels personal. If you're holding on to it for a long time, it feels like you're holding on to it so that you can ambush me with it. So when people are giving you feedback that is intended to be helpful and constructive, it always has a dimension of goodwill in it, and they offer to help. And when people offer destructive feedback, it almost always has some kind of gotcha quality to it.
You note that consistently one of the top reasons for an employee's dissatisfaction with their manager or leader is, quote, failure to provide constructive feedback, close quote. Would you expound on this?
Let's go to the baseline, because that's where it begins. All human beings share in common three basic needs. All human beings want to be valued. All human beings want to be able to make sense out of the world around them. And all human beings want a sense of purpose or direction for their lives. And the more well-intentioned a person is, and the more focused they are on making a contribution to their people around them, to their organization, to the common good, the more committed they are to making a contribution, the more interested they are in knowing where they stand. They want to be able to make sense out of where they are in the organization. Am I or am I not meeting expectations? Because most well-intentioned people in their minds, and to the benefit of the company, are going somewhere. And they want to know if they're going to the right place, if they're on the right path, if they're doing the things that need to be done. And they certainly want to know if they're working hard at things that don't matter. The best people welcome feedback because they want to succeed and they want to know where they stand.
Will you discuss the importance and the strategy of building trust as it relates to feedback?
Let's begin by recognizing that the common perception as to what trust is all about, that the paradigm around that has to be flipped. And when I say the paradigm has to be flipped, you ask the average person, what comes to mind when you hear the word trust? And their response is usually something like this. Well, I think about the people I can trust and the people I can't trust. Well, the place to begin is to think about trust in a very different way, and that is, don't focus on who you can trust. Focus first on who can trust you. Be a good example of a trustworthy person to your colleagues, a good example of a trustworthy person to the people who report to you, and that will establish a pathway, and it will coax them toward a similar set of behaviors.
A supervisor or manager or executive who injects regular feedback into a workplace environment is likely to find some resistance to it, particularly at first. In fact, their team may even find it awkward and likely uncomfortable at first. Can you address strategies for getting through this phase as smoothly as possible to a point where it becomes more comfortable and certainly much more normalized?
Well, a great place to begin is to model what you want. If you want to develop an organization, a team where feedback is normalized, the place to begin is with yourself. For the first few weeks, perhaps even for the first few months, always include in your all-hands meetings or your staff meetings, your weekly meetings, always include a time when you ask, what do I need to do? What am I not doing? Where am I failing you? How can I be more supportive of you? And these questions should be directed at the direct reports. How can I be helpful to you? What am I failing to do? What needs to be done that's not being done from my role and responsibility? So you begin by emphasizing that you want feedback and only asking for feedback for yourself, and then, of course, demonstrating that you will use that feedback. And then you begin step 2 with one-on-one conversations with people where you ask them for feedback about the relationship you have with them, and then you ask if you can give them feedback. They'll almost certainly say yes, and you give them something that's usable and understandable. And then you ask them if you can help them with the information that you have provided. Do they need additional resources or support? So the basic steps are begin with yourself and then start one-on-one with people, giving and receiving and offering to help. And then you can eventually expand it to a general conversation within the team. But you won't get there if you avoid steps 1 and 2. That is, model, demonstrate your willingness to accept feedback, and then move on to inviting people to self-critique, to provide feedback, back and forth in a one-on-one private conversation where people can get comfortable and used to the idea that this is not about gotcha. It's not about putting people on the spot. It's about investing in each other's success.
For a company that really wants to make feedback a cornerstone, what are the benefits of establishing regular feedback as a normal standard of the workplace environment?
Well, it's the ultimate process improvement. And when I say it's the ultimate process improvement, every company says at one time or another, and frequently, in fact, our people are our most valuable asset. Well, if my people are my most valuable asset, everything that can be done to enable them to perform at their very best and to develop pride of association, pride of workmanship should be done. And nothing is more helpful than the investment of consistent, constructive, well-intended feedback. Just like with an individual, when it's not provided, the individual never reaches their potential. So the organization never reaches its potential because it has people who don't know what they need to know and therefore cannot reach the best version of themselves, either personally or professionally.
Let's look at the other side of that. Let's think about an organization, a company where people hear things like this. Derek, you need to stay in your own lane. Or, Derek, if we need your opinion, we'll come ask you for it. What are the costs of a workplace where feedback is not the standard? If you will, start with the cost to the individual and then discuss the cost to the organization.
I like that question a lot because in such organizations where feedback is not normalized, people reach their potential by default, not by design, which means that most people never do. And of course, therefore, the organization reaches its potential by default, not by design, which means it usually never reaches its potential. The critical thing here is that in an organization where people feel that they can make sense out of things, they feel that they have a sense of purpose and direction, and that they're valued, they give you something called discretionary energy. And discretionary energy is something you can't pay for or buy. It's something people must choose to give you. So what's discretionary energy? Discretionary energy is that employee who feels that they've been given adequate feedback to know where they stand. They have a clear understanding of what it is they're to do. They're recognized for doing it well, and it is clear that their contribution is valued. That person will choose to give you discretionary energy. Discretionary energy is when I choose to work a few minutes overtime and I'm not worried about being paid. When I decide to give extra thought to the project I'm working on, even when I'm at home, even though I'm not being paid for that. And I'm willing to walk down the hall to have a conversation that I might have thought was inconvenient in the past in order to make sure the project is successful. It's the extra time and energy and resources that a person is willing to give you when they care about the organization because it's clear to them that the organization cares about them.
Whose job is it to solicit feedback?
It's the leader's responsibility to solicit feedback. And in a team of peers where you have a group of supervisors that are a team, or a group of managers that are a team, a group of executives that are a team, it's everybody's responsibility. It's essential not to wait for somebody to introduce the concept, but if I want to be a part of a high-performance team, I want to say to other supervisors, give me feedback. I want to ask if I can give feedback to other supervisors, the same with managers and executives. So if I'm the boss, I got to lead the way. If I'm a team of peers, I still got to assume responsibility, take the initiative, offer feedback, and ask for it.
Sort of putting boots to the ground on this, what is the most practical set of questions that somebody can ask or should ask to solicit constructive feedback from others?
It's important to be hard on issues and easy on people. if that sounds a little odd, think about your experience. You've probably had the experience of those instances where the boss was hard on people and easy on the issue. It usually happens something like this. Something goes wrong on the production floor, and the boss shows up, and her first question is, "Who did this?" Well, that's being hard on the person and easy on the issue. By contrast, when you're hard on the issue and easy on the person, something goes wrong on the production floor and the boss shows up and her first question is, "Well, clearly this is not what we want. So let's walk through the steps that got us to where we don't want to be, and let's figure out where we failed." Sometimes it's the process. Sometimes it's the materials. And sometimes it's a particular team member. And if that's the case, so be it. But the goal is not to find someone to blame. The goal is to solve the problem. So the most practical questions that I can ask when it comes to soliciting constructive feedback is the kinds of questions that invite people to share what they saw, what they understand, what they think, and to do it in a way that is comfortable for them to say and comfortable for the other person to hear.
Would you talk about what place listening and empathy hold in the feedback process?
Well, Derek, here you've moved into an important issue generationally. Certainly it's important for Gen X and for boomers, but it's even more important for millennials and Gen Zs. And I would phrase it this way. Every good leader needs to develop this skill. It is the ability to listen without judgment and to gently connect people to reality. And when you can listen without judgment and gently connect people to reality, then you are empathizing in a way that has the greatest positive impact on the performance of the individual and the performance of the team. I make the generational reference because millennials and Zs are particularly sensitive to the idea of being judged by the standards or mores of boomers in particular. They see themselves as living in a new time, a new age, which of course is true, having different perspectives and of course different lived experiences. So millennials and Gen Zs are very open to the boomer who will listen and not pass judgment, but simply listen, and then, with an effort to be helpful, make a connection to reality. And it's also true that it can be done in the reverse order. Sometimes boomers, for example, have a great deal of difficulty with technology. And sometimes they express that in frustration that seems disproportionate to a millennial who grew up with the technology. But if the millennial listens to the boomer without judgment, it takes into account that they grew up in a world without this technology, then that willingness to listen without judgment to the boomer as they rant and rave about the difficulty of using their smartphone, and then the millennial gently points out what facets or aspects of the phone would be helpful for the boomer to know, then real connection can be made there. But the importance of listening without judgment and connecting people to reality can strengthen a workplace, particularly when there is a recognition of the generational dynamics involved.
How should a manager deal with a direct report who just absolutely refuses to accept constructive, well-intentioned feedback? Maybe they do this through constant interruptions when the feedback is provided, or maybe just argumentativeness before even considering the feedback. What's your recommendation?
Well, here, Derek, you've hit on one of the big challenges to providing feedback, and it's often a roadblock that young and more inexperienced supervisors and managers can't get past. And they can't get past it because it seems like something that they can't nail down or they can't quite get a handle on. And the reason they feel like they can't quite get a handle on it is that they're either unaware or they forget something important about organizational governance. And this is what I mean. When I sit down with a team member to offer them feedback at the right time in the right place, and I'm doing it in a responsible manner, being constructive, offering the goodwill that it should accompany. When I offer my feedback in the proper way, and they refuse delivery on it and want to be argumentative about it, this is the point where I need to end the conversation. And I need to end the conversation and say something like, I can see this is not really working. We're not really going anywhere helpful. So let's get back together maybe tomorrow afternoon, same time, same place, and let's continue this conversation. So I'll wait a couple of hours, and I go to that employee, that team member, one-on-one, and I say, between now and our meeting tomorrow afternoon, I want you to keep something in mind. And this is what I want you to keep in mind. When you come to that conversation, you need to come to that conversation with ideas about how we can work together, about how we can solve the problem we were talking about a little while ago. Because this is something that you need to know about our relationship. Because you're an employee of this organization, it is an expectation that is non-negotiable that you will cooperate with me. Cooperation is non-negotiable. So you need to come to the meeting prepared to help me find a solution to the problem we have to solve together. It is not optional whether or not you cooperate. That's a condition of employment. And then the next day, when the meeting takes place again, if I need to, I remind the person that cooperation is not negotiable, that we need to find a good path forward for this issue, and then move on. And of course, soon or late, every supervisor or manager will have that employee who genuinely doesn't get it. They just simply don't accept the idea that I have to cooperate with the people that I report to, and I don't have to cooperate with the people that I work with. And in that particular instance, there's only one path, and that path is to document conversations and to begin the process of managing the person out of the organization. Because no organization can be governed if everyone in the organization thinks they do not have to cooperate with the people they work with.
There was a pretty funny ESPN commercial some years back where these two people are in a car and they're talking, and then one of them discovers that the other person is a fan of their arch nemesis football team. And at that moment, the person opens the door, leaps out of the moving car, rolls down a hill, and somehow this was preferable to being in the same car as the person who was a fan of the other team. So I'll say something I'm sure will surprise you, Dr. Chapman. Sometimes people can be petty. I'm sure you've never seen that. That
is news. Go ahead.
Maybe someone is a Michigan football fan, and they have given feedback to one of their employees that wearing that Ohio State shirt on Fridays needs to stop if they want basic respect in the workplace. How should someone receiving what they perceive as truly petty or irrelevant feedback, maybe even bullying feedback, respond to such feedback apart from just taking another job?
Well, another great question. And yes, people can be petty. The interest that many people have in sports, these kinds of things are not unusual. In fact, a specific instance comes to mind where a couple of folks were arguing over a professional football team. One of them was a Steelers fan and one of them was a Green Bay fan. Basically, the dynamic was as you described it. The Pittsburgh Steelers fan was always telling the Green Bay Packer fan, you ought not to wear your team wear in the workplace on Fridays, which was casual day, and making some joke that was not very tasteful or a bullying statement about Green Bay. The Green Bay fan handled it quite well. Her initial response was simply to smile and let it pass. But after it went on for several weeks during the season, the Green Bay fan finally turned to the Pittsburgh Steelers fan and said, it's really none of my business what sports team you support. And he got it. So sometimes it's best just to start by trying to ignore it, but if necessary, it may be necessary to simply make the point that these are private decisions that everyone has a right to make for themselves. And if you can do it in a way as witty as she did, then all the better.
Let's say that I'm a leader and I'm confident that I am providing genuinely constructive feedback, but I find that it is consistently being met with defensiveness or outright rejection, my feedback. How should I, as the leader, address this?
Here again, it comes down to the idea that cooperation is non-negotiable, that when people are provided feedback that is fact-based, reality-based, intended to enable the person to perform at their best, and delivery is refused. And sometimes people refuse delivery on the information that is essential to their success, and they refuse delivery on information that's essential to them being the best version of themselves. And when that pattern is clearly established, that it's not going to change, that person has what I call a sign on their forehead. And the sign on their forehead says, I don't belong here. I don't intend to make a contribution beyond what I absolutely have to. And here again, the supervisor or manager, the leader, will have to make a decision about whether or not this person can remain. Because when people won't accept feedback, it's not just that it impacts their ability to improve, because they won't get better. They won't become an increasingly valuable member of the team, but they will also give others the impression that they do not have to make an effort to become an increasingly valuable member of the team either. It has a corrupting effect.
When you think about accountability and constructive feedback, what would you say in your experience has been most effective connecting accountability to constructive feedback?
I mentioned earlier that all people share three basic needs: the need to be valued, the need to make sense out of things, the need for a sense of purpose or direction. And what I've found is that people like and welcome an invitation to live up to their highest opinion of themselves. Everyone has in their mind an idea of their ideal self, what they're like at their best. And when feedback that is constructive appeals to a person's highest opinion of themselves, then you can establish an accountability that's internal to the person, which will, of course, make their accountability to those around them more pronounced and more evident. Here again, most people are well-intentioned, and most of the struggles that they have in their personal and professional lives are the deficit or the difference between what they do or say and what the person they actually view themselves as being. Whenever there's a gap between my highest opinion of myself and something that I've done that I think doesn't live up to my highest opinion, then that gets my attention and creates an accountability that nobody else can create except me. And that person will get better. So appealing to people's highest opinion of themselves is the way to connect accountability to the value of constructive feedback. And you see that in something we mentioned earlier, and that is that person who is conscientious, who's a good employee, who wants to know where they stand because they're going somewhere and they want to be successful.
Dr. Chapman, my next to last question, if you were to very concisely summarize the strategy for normalized, regular, constructive feedback in a workplace environment, how would you summarize that?
Well, that's easy, Derek. I would say start with this. First the mirror, then the window. Whenever something goes wrong in your department or your reporting group, look in the mirror first. Don't look at the people who report to you. Look in the mirror first and invite others to participate as you look in the mirror first. And then after you have perfected the art of looking in the mirror first, then invite others to do the same. Lead them to do the same. An example, if I have someone who's not meeting expectations, I shouldn't look at them first. I should look at me. And I should ask myself, okay, have I, as the supervisor, made the expectation clear? Have I, as the supervisor, provided adequate training to meet that expectation? Provided tools to meet that expectation and consistent feedback to enable the person to meet that expectation? And if I've done all four of those things, then my look in the mirror has confirmed that I need to talk with the person about what they need to do. But if I fail to do any one of those four things, then I've got to work on me first before I turn my attention to others. So if I could summarize good feedback, first the mirror, then the window. Make sure that I'm doing what I should be doing to manage me and get incrementally better at what I do before I invite others or provide others feedback aimed at doing the same.
And Dr. Chapman, as we draw this episode to a close, what did I fail to ask you that I should have? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
There is one other thing that I would add, Derek, and I appreciate your asking. Let me phrase it this way. No one is 100% right 100% of the time. Everybody is fallible. No one is perfect. And when you get in touch with your own fallibility and begin to develop a sense of humor about the fact that sometimes you not only make mistakes, but sometimes you make dumb mistakes, then you're more positioned to self-critique, that is, ask yourself hard questions, give yourself feedback, and you're also someone who others discover through the way that you deal with yourself that they too could learn to do that. If I'm willing to accept that I make mistakes and to discuss those mistakes openly with others, then it invites others to do the same. And the grounds for feedback widens and broadens and makes it possible. If I am not willing to ask myself hard questions, if I'm not willing to accept my own fallibility, then I will find it very difficult to accept when others ask me hard questions or when others suggest that maybe I am fallible and that I do make mistakes. No one's 100% right 100% of the time. We're all fallible. No one's perfect. And developing a sense of humor about that and helping others do the same is a great place to begin in nurturing an organization where feedback is normalized.
If those listening are interested in seeing a regular leadership quote from Dr. Chapman, you can follow Ken Chapman Associates Incorporated on LinkedIn or Facebook, or the handle The Leader's Code on Instagram or X, formerly known as Twitter. For the convenience of those listening, at brainchatterpodcast.com, we will post links to various resources related to this, as well as to Dr. Chapman's bio and links to the several books he has authored or co-authored over his career. Those books include The Leader's Code and Safety Beyond the Numbers. Brain Chatter is a production of Ken Chapman Associates Incorporated. We assist clients across North America and beyond with leadership development, corporate culture transformation initiatives, behavior-based professional development for health and safety issues, individual and team assessments, conflict and performance management, succession planning, and team building. making a difference in organizations and individuals' lives for over 40 years. Learn more at leaderscode.com. Please consider ranking and reviewing us wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening. All constructive feedback on this episode is welcome.